Aloha everyone. Welcome all and thank you so much for being here today and joining us for the China Market Webinar Series. My name is Timothy Tu. I'm the Economic Development Specialist with the Hawaii State Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, well known as DBET. Before we start the webinar, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. All participants are muted upon entry. If you have any technical issue, please leave us a comment. The webinar will also be recorded. And lastly, if you have any questions for the panelists, please type them in the Q&A box. The questions will be go over at the end of the webinar. So now I would like to introduce Dennis Ling, the administrator of the Business Development and Support Division at DBET, to give us a remark. Dennis.
Aloha and ni hao. My name is Dennis Ling. I'm the administrator for the Business Development and Support Division of the Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism. I would like to say thank you to all of you, the panelists and our audience who are participating in our very first China Market webinar series from DBET. In 2019, with a GDP of $14.14 trillion, China, as you know, is it's the world's second largest economy and is the fastest growing $1 trillion economy in the world. And it has experienced exponential growth in terms of innovation and exportation, the manufacture of products over the past few decades. Many of our companies are looking to export their products into this market. However, within all the uncertainties and the situation nowadays, I believe many of us are not sure or having concerns on how to get into this tremendous market. Therefore, starting today, DBET and the State of Hawaii office in Beijing are conducting a webinar series that feature 10 sessions on various topics for Hawaii companies on entering the China market, from starting a business, building a Hawaii branded business, to the export of products, and to marketing and advertising within the Chinese market. Today's presentation will be focused on the South China, Guangdong area. Guangdong is our sister state, and it's a very close sister state. As you may know, most of the Chinese in Hawaii can trace their ancestry back to Guangdong. And so it's very appropriate that we have for our first session representatives from the South China region. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Gordon Zhang, the Executive Director of the State of Hawaii Beijing office, who is the host of this seminar webinar series. Thank you so much, and I look forward to all of you enjoying and learning as much as you can during this webinar series. Thank you again, and please stay safe. Bye-bye.
Aloha to our friends in Hawaii, and 早上好 to our friends and speakers in China. And it's truly an honor to host this webinar. And just as Dennis mentioned, our first webinar will focus on the business climate in China. And a lot of things happened in recent years, and especially in this year. And then it's natural that you have questions like, whether it's a good time to do business in China, and whether the Chinese market makes sense to businesses in Hawaii. And so that's why we organize this series of webinars. And first one will focus on this particular subject. And before we go and invite our speakers, first I'd also like to have my colleague in DBET, Jamie Lam, to tell us about the High Step program. I think that all our friends in Hawaii know this program, but our friends in China may have not heard of it. High Step stands for Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program. About this program, let's have Jamie Lam.
Thank you, Gordon. Mahalo and aloha, everyone. Again, my name is Jamie Lum, and I am with the Business Development branch here at DBED. And so we just want to talk briefly about High Step. It is a program that is funded primarily through a grant that we received from the U.S. Small Business Administration. And so hopefully for some of you out there, Hawaii companies that may be joining on this webinar, you may be interested in possibly exporting to China, or perhaps you are already exporting and maybe looking to expand. So those are the types of results that we're looking for. We want to get more Hawaii companies to be exporting. We want to increase export sales of Hawaii products and services. And so through the High Step program, it is an export development program whereby we help provide training and business advising services for companies. And we work with many federal and state partners to help our companies gain more knowledge about what it takes to export and about markets out there that may be looking for Hawaii products. We also help to support companies by direct financial assistance that they can apply for to help to implement parts of their export plan. And then we also help to support participation in trade shows by organizing Hawaii pavilions at large trade shows. Now, of course, in the pandemic, in this time, many of the trade shows and in-person types of events are not taking place. So we are looking for models of doing these types of things online and virtually. But anyway, High Step program is here to help support Hawaii companies that are interested in exporting. And if you have any questions, you can check out our website, which is Invest.Hawaii.Gov. And you just go under the exporting tab and there's information on the High Step program. We are in the process, we were just awarded another grant of a little over $500,000 from the US government. And we're in the process of updating our program so that we can start rolling it out in early November. But again, Invest.Hawaii.Gov will give you the information on the High Step program. And there's also information, I believe my email address is on the website. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Mute. All right, thank you, Jamie. And let's move on. And we would like to invite our first speaker, Miss Lindsay Malecha. Is that right? Yeah. Miss Lindsay has been with USDA for over 10 years, and now she's working in the Agricultural Trade Office in the Consulate General of Guangzhou, and she's Deputy Director. And well, she will talk about cover three major topics about the agricultural products in Hawaii: coffee, macadamia, and honey. I know that besides these major exports, Hawaii has a lot more to offer. And I know that our listeners must have questions to Lindsay, but we will have a chance after she finishes, after all the speakers finishes their speech, and you have a chance to ask her questions. Well, a lot of have changed since COVID-19. And so in the past, Hawaii has heavily relied on tourism. And in this new normal, and a lot of us thought that probably we can try to expand our export of agricultural products. And I believe that Lindsay is no doubt the first contact point for information and support of such products. Now let me hand over to Ms. Lindsay Malecha, please.
Thank you, Gordon, and thank you so much to Dennis and the Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism for inviting me to participate this morning. I know that Hawaii has a lot of agricultural products, and there are certainly opportunities for those in China. So I'm happy to be here to talk to you all. I focused my presentation on a few of the largest ones that we've seen, but as Gordon mentioned, there are a lot of other ag products that do come into China. And I'm certainly happy to follow up with you either on this presentation or afterward, just to talk more about the market for different agricultural products here in China, as well as share more information on where you can look. So I'm happy to follow up with you all afterward, and thanks again for having me. Next slide, please. So I do just want to start out giving a quick introduction to the Foreign Agricultural Service and our work here. I'll then talk a little bit about the consumers that you'll find in China, about the market for different agricultural products, and then I'll leave you with ways to find that more information about us. So the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service, can you go back one, please, Timothy? Thanks. Is an export agency, part of the US Department of Agriculture. We have 95 offices in 76 countries around the world. And our job is really to expand market access opportunities for US agricultural products. We do three main things: market intelligence, providing information like we are today about the market here, what the trends and developments are. Market access, working with our counterparts in the capital to open new markets for US agricultural products, and also market development. So working with companies like yourselves, importers and distributors, trying to make those connections and find opportunities and develop business relationships here in country. So on the next slide, you'll see USDA's largest mission, FAS's largest overseas presence, is here in China. We have an Office of Agricultural Affairs in Beijing, which does a lot of that market access work. And we also have 4 agricultural trade offices: Beijing, Shenyang, Shanghai, and here in Guangzhou. We also have a great resource here in the APHIS, the Animal Plant Health Inspection Office, which is located in Beijing. And they do a lot of those technical discussions and are busy now working on implementation protocols and things under the Trade One Phase Agreement. So as Gordon said, I'm based here in Guangzhou, down in South China, and that's the green area is our primary area of coverage. Although I'll try and talk a little bit about the China market in general. If you have questions, we can certainly get you in touch with others. On the next slide, you'll just talking a little bit about consumers. You've undoubtedly heard of what's been called the China miracle, lifting billions of people out of poverty and becoming a significantly more developed economy. This growing middle class of consumers are choosing to spend more on food and nutrition, which is creating opportunities for imported food products as they try to more and to diversify eating habits. Food safety and quality are some of the top considerations in the middle and upper classes who have more disposable income. It's also important to draw a distinction between consumers and politics. It has been a challenging time for politics the last year and a half that I've been here. And although the government does have a lot of influence over the narrative in China, so far we've seen little indication that politics are affecting consumers' choices in large-scale ways. Some of the marketing efforts that we do here that would traditionally have lots of American flags maybe have fewer of those, but overall, Chinese consumers' trust and support of US food quality items are really do remain. So with that backdrop, I'll dive into a few of the commodities that Gordon mentioned as being of particular interest to Hawaiian businesses. And the first of those is macadamia nuts. As you can see here, macadamia nut imports have generally been increasing in the past 5 years. The vast majority of them do come into China as in shell. It's based on a traditional belief that in-shell nuts that they can crack themselves are fresher and healthier. And we visited a processor here in South China that includes a metal key in all of their retail bags that they sell. This, like I mentioned, is more of a traditional belief, and you'll see a lot of the products I have featured here that we've found in stores recently to be kernels and shelled. That trend is changing, and you'll see a little bit more of the shelled variety come in, but China really does have a lot of processing capacity here, and is able to take some of that burden here. So next slide. So one of the challenges that US macadamia nuts have in China is the tariff issue. You'll see here in the pie chart on the right that the majority of imports are from Australia. In addition to expanding their production of nuts, including macadamia nuts, they enjoy 0% tariff under the free trade agreement that they have with China. If you're interested in learning more about that, our office in Australia just published yesterday, I believe, a tree nut report or a nut report that has more information on macadamia nuts and their production in Australia. South Africa, also does enjoy more favorable tariffs. In early 2020, China instituted a policy whereby importers could apply for tariff exclusions, which is why you'll see the two different tariff rates there down at the bottom. If that tariff exclusion is granted by the government, it needs to be applied for ahead of time, then it takes away the additional 15%. We have seen this in our conversations with importers as having been successful. They've successfully applied for and received that tariff exemption for macadamia nuts, although it does still leave a rather high tariff rate for US macadamias. Next slide. So macadamia nuts have been present in China for a number of years. The Chinese word for them is Hawaii nut, which is great marketing for you all. I've heard that the Australian growers tried to change the name of it, but I've sort of given up on that. It hasn't been too much of a successful campaign. But they have good consumer awareness and people do associate them with Hawaii. The high oil content and high price lead consumers to see them as more of a premium product. And where we see room for growth is really in both the confectionery industry and in snack foods. So one of the really popular treats here in China, and we just passed the Mid-Autumn Festival, is mooncakes. Those mooncakes have a oily center. They're pretty oily themselves, but they have an oily center and helps bind the ingredients together. With the popularity of nuts in general, producers are using more macadamia nut, more nuts and other fillings for those. So we think there could be a good opportunity there, as well as general snack size packages of nuts, which people are very accustomed now to grabbing and going. Next slide, please. So turning attention to honey, New Zealand and Australia, well, let's back up a minute. China produces a lot of honey domestically, but there does remain an import market for honey as well. We've been trending around $80 million of honey per year. These do tend to be specialty honeys. There's not a culture here of adding honey to your tea or putting it on bread and toast, or my favorite was always peanut butter sandwiches. But they generally add it to hot water or with ginger or lemon to try and make a sort of elixir, or have a spoonful as a sort of medicinal addition to their day. To a lesser extent, you will find honey in Western restaurants. particularly those that serve high tea or Western style breakfast, catering to those higher class customers who are looking for the premium honey with their breads or desserts. You'll see here, Australia and New Zealand do make up more than 80% of honey imports. And a big reason for this, we think, is the 0% tariff that both of them enjoy here. The US is less than 1% of the honey. And because of that small volume, we have not seen the tariff exclusion applied for here, although it is certainly possible. In addition to tariffs, though, Australia and New Zealand have done a good job differentiating their product from the domestic varieties. Since consumers see honey as health food, they do pay particular attention to food safety, quality, and the messaging around less pollution and the more natural perception that Australia and New Zealand have, particularly with the air and water. In addition, there is high recognition of the Manuka honey, and there's recognition really across China. Imported honey does retail higher, obviously, than domestically produced, and therefore you'll often find it in high-end retail stores and also through e-commerce channels, where people will specifically look for imported honey varieties. And consumers can be really assured that the honey is authentic, and they can often get it delivered to their home in 30 minutes or less. And finally, turning my attention to coffee, I know at the beginning, Timothy, I believe, mentioned it, or Dennis maybe mentioned an upcoming trip with some coffee exporters talking and doing a virtual seminar in Taipei. And that sounds like an amazing opportunity. These are the types of things that we think there are opportunities for here. But talking a bit about coffee, I've got my coffee here with me this morning. It is a growing trend here in China. You'll know China is traditionally a tea culture. It produces a lot of tea, but coffee is catching on, particularly with younger audiences, 25 to 35 white collar workers. Many people do grab a cup of soy milk here in South China with their buns, but increasingly you'll see them coming out of KFC or even out of some of the convenience stores, 7-Eleven and others, with coffee. So that culture is catching on. And there are certainly high-end coffee chains here, including Starbucks and other sort of premium specialty and boutique coffee chains here. A lot of these chains offer milk-heavy drinks and other fruit teas and stuff as consumers learn and develop more of a taste for coffee. But it is becoming more and more common here in China. On the shelves, you'll see a lot of imported coffee. There's not a big roasting tradition here in China, but China does import a lot of roasted coffee. There we go. As expected, you'll see a lot of the roasted coffee come from countries that roast a lot. Malaysia and Vietnam make up about 50%. There's also certainly markets for Italian and Switzerland. The US does have a fairly decent size of the market here. 7% of the roasted coffee imported to China is Hawaiian. On the unroasted side, I guess predictably, a lot of that does come from the producing countries. It, as you saw on the previous slide, is a small amount proportionally, but a lot of it does come from Vietnam, our neighbor, as well as Brazil. Next slide, please. So the US is less competitive with other origin coffee in regards to tariffs for both the roasted and unroasted. But and as I mentioned, although since the quantity isn't large, they haven't applied for the tariff exclusion. But there is certainly coffee coming in, and you will find it on shelves and certainly in the e-commerce channels here. There we go. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier, coffee is really growing in popularity, and we see it not as a competitor to, but not an exclusive that people are only going to choose coffee or only going to choose fruit teas or only going to choose some of these new Chinese style teas. These have lots of dairy, whipped cheesecake-like topping. And what the trend seems to be is that the higher white-collar consumers do have a few of each drinks per week. And they'll grab maybe a coffee in the morning and then go out for a tea in the afternoon. So that is certainly offering big opportunities as the middle class grows here in China, and consumers increasingly want to spend more of their money on fancy things. Although much of the wealth is centered in first-tier cities, there is a growing specialty and boutique coffee shop culture throughout China. Some in first-tier cities, but surprisingly, we've also seen some in other areas, second and third-tier cities, particularly those where there are tourist centers or sort of relaxing places for people from first-tier cities to go. But it is increasingly becoming a trend, and people do want to sit down and relax with their cup of coffee. There's a great place here in Guangzhou that does roast their own beans, and it's really trendy for people to go and take their pictures and things like that. So those boutique coffee shops are not just here in Guangzhou, but really are developing throughout the country. Next slide, please. So just talking a bit about the importers and how they look at products. We do see them being pretty price sensitive, more so I'd say than consumers. And the uncertainty that's in the trade relationship right now between the US and China has affected them in many different ways, as they don't know the direction the relationship is going to be when the product comes in. And there's some worry about what that would mean for tariffs or the ability to get in. That said, that uncertainty certainly plays a role in the background, but Chinese importers do look very much for long-term relationships and continuous work with their foreign counterparts. And although face-to-face is always best, we say, virtual is increasingly an option. Like we're doing today, Chinese importers, are still really looking for new products and ways to appease and excite Chinese consumers. And so they really are willing to look to virtual options to have conversations for new products. Oftentimes for some of these very new to market products, they will seek coordination and support on market development and market promotion, asking for your help in getting the word out to consumers. We have seen others who've signed up, other exporters who've signed up with an exclusive distribution agent here in China who does a lot of those in-country activities for them and really pushes the market development piece here in China. So a little bit about the channels, and you can read more about these in our GAIN reports. As I mentioned, one of the things USDA does is put out reports every so often about new trends, the current market conditions, et cetera. And the retail report is a particularly good one that you may want to take a look at about how to get product into China. But the chart below shows a few of the main ways the traditional exporter, importer, distributor to retail relationships are popular here, but also e-commerce, as with everywhere else, is growing tremendously, getting that product in, as well as a special program here called the Cross-Border E-commerce Channel that gives consumers a certain dollar value that they can purchase per year, but it comes into a bonded warehouse and then goes through without paying tariffs on it. So it's a new way to get new products to Chinese consumers. And we have seen a lot of growth in it. They just upped the limit to about $8,000 this year, I believe. And then next slide. So just to wrap up, I know we've talked about a lot of different products here today, macadamia nuts, honey, and coffee, but there are certainly opportunities for other U.S. agricultural products. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture here, our Foreign Agricultural Service in Guangzhou, we do want to help. We are happy to work with you to build on the sister province, sister state relationships that you have here in South China. And we do have relationships with lots of importers and happy to provide both market information and some contacts if there's any follow-up that we can help with. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You'll also see the website for our USDA China. This lists our other offices. And I've referred a lot to gain reports here. So if you have questions and want to take a look at any of these, please do take a look at the gain reports. Our search function has gotten tremendously better, and you can find more information about Australian production or Chinese import conditions. So thanks again for having me this morning, and I'll look forward to questions.
Thank you, Lindsay, Malecha. And during my conversation with her, actually, she not only knows the products she mentioned, she also knew that there is an ongoing project with Hawaii between the Hainan province and Hawaii. And actually, the DBAT Beijing office has been working with Hawaii to export Hawaii papaya to China. And this project has been out there for 8-10 years already, and it seems that we are very close to finish all the red tape procedures. And besides this papaya thing, and then I heard that Hawaii is also a big exporter of bees and very good quality pigs. You know, the U.S.-China trade war, one of things is about the export of U.S. pork. But, you know, as she said, that there are opportunities, and but we welcome that Hawaii businesses come to us, come to our Beijing office, come to Lindsay, that we are here all want to help. The Beijing office has been here for 10 years, not only 10 years. Actually 14 years, and we look forward to the visits of Hawaii businesses and help them to connect with departments and organizations like USDA, ATO, Trade, AmCham, and also the relevant people like Mr. Russell Liu. Oh, okay, let's move on to the next speaker. Dr. Harley Seyedin. And Dr. Harley Seyedin is a very long China expert in China. And he is, well, probably many of you have heard of him already if you are doing business with China for some time. He is a well-known international businessman, humanitarian, philanthropist, and world-renowned China hand. Well, he enjoys too many titles. To just give you a few, well, Dr. Harley Seyedin and Elon Musk, they won the 2017 Oslo Business for Peace Award. And he is also recipient of the Peace Through Commerce Medal. he was a special advisor to the chairman of China-US Relations Foundation when the chairman was former President George H.W. Bush. He has led the unusual growth of the AmCham South China. Under his leadership, the membership grew from 211 to a current more than 2,000. And also in the past few years, under his leadership, AmCham South China has raised more than $3 million in charitable donations for poverty relief programs in China. In the business world, well, Dr. Seyedin has been successful in many ways. He has achieved, well, under his leadership, the business made many firsts in multiple industries and sectors, including the first majority Western-owned and operated power plant. I know that was a challenge thing, you know, the power, the telecommunications, banks, you know, heavily monopolized by Chinese state-owned. But Dr. Seyedin was successful to create the first Western-owned business. And he also created the first Western invested toll road, well, another challenging project, and also the first US accredited joint university. We have detailed bio of Dr. Seyedin, and any of you are interested in getting the details, you can either go to his website, AmCham South China, or you can reach out to Debet or to me, and we can supply with you with a soft copy. And today, Dr. Seyedin will tell us about AmCham South China, what they do, and what we can expect from this market. Now, thanks, Dr. Seyedin. Please go ahead.
Gordon, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you here today. I'm humbled with your introduction. I'll try to make my presentation to actually be shorter than the introduction. So I appreciate your being so kind to me. I think we can start by simply talking about the misunderstandings about China. Most people see China as a single country. I see China as a continental economy with many different moving pieces, one of them being South China, primarily what we call the Pearl River Delta area, and now, according to Chinese plans, the Greater Bay Area in South China, a part of China that actually has an economy that's larger than Holland put together, and just a combination of the 12 different jurisdictions and areas. Now, when we look at the economy of Guangdong itself, it is the 13th largest economy in the world if it was a country. So when we talk about focusing on selling to China or doing business in China, it is best for us to use a rifle approach and select jurisdictions that can really work with us to sell our products than try to feel that we can conquer the entire China's economy. Not very different than being in Chicago, for example, and saying that you're in all of US. It doesn't work that way. US has many different moving parts. Having said that, I think one of the things that we need to look at is the news of the growth of China that came out just a few days ago. China grew by 4.9% for the first half of this year, when we look at the last quarter. Now, if you just take 4.9% into China's 14 plus trillion economy, which Gordon mentioned earlier, you will see that that means annual creation of somewhere around $700 to $800 billion in new economy, larger than most countries in the world, and probably in the top 20 in the world. What I want to talk about here is first, of course, the chamber. We have grown exponentially in South China. We represent nearly 40% of all U.S.-China business, trade, and investment through our companies here. Most of our companies have been here between 10 or over 20 years. 98% of our companies are profitable, and the ones that are not, we expect to be profitable within two to 5 years. And most of the businesses that start up in South China are achieving profitability in 2 years or less from investment. They are mostly profitable, and literally all of planned investment. Those are companies with feasibility studies, knowing the market, having the right product and right strategy. Nearly all of them succeed in South China. Now, we, as a chamber, we produce many reports every year. The two primary reports that we produce every year are white paper on the state of business environment in China, and it's 500+ page comprehensive study of all the different things that happened the prior year in Chinese economy, and involves analysis of over 100 different industries. It involves analysis and study of hundreds and hundreds of different reports that are written about China by academia, by media, by government, various governments, and our white paper is actually read by the leadership of China. One of the things that we take pride in, that in our 2019 white paper, we had advocated the establishment of a separate judicial mechanism for complaints by foreign invested enterprises, and it was adopted. And actually, as of October 1, there is regulations on how a foreign enterprise can actually file a complaint at the central government level against any local jurisdiction that may have violated their rights, may have hurt them in one way or another, may have infringed on their property rights. This is a first, and we believe it's going to have a major impact in how foreign invested enterprises are treated in China, and it is something that we take great pride in. In addition to that, we do another study. It's called the Special Report on State of Business in South China. It is a 100+ page bilingual quantitative study of businesses in South China. Includes half American companies, Chinese companies for the other half, including all foreign invested enterprises from other countries, European Union, Latin America, South America, and Asian countries. And it gives us an idea as to what people are doing as far as investment trends, as far as employment, etc. We know all of our reports are available for free download on our website. And if we go to the major studies slide, we will put this on later. You can just copy that QR code and download any report that you want. We have thousands of our reports that are being downloaded. We have tens of special report policy studies in China as well. Now, having said that, I would like to talk about what it is that happens in China. I'm going to go directly to that. I'm going to go to this slide just so that you can see. So one of the things that's happened, as of March of this year, 71% of our companies were no longer in the export business. They're primarily here producing goods and services in China for the Chinese market. This is hundreds of billions of dollars that we're talking about. Less than 29% of our companies are still exporting some products out of China, but majority of the work that's done by American companies in South China is to sell to China. And one of the things that I would like to say is the fact that if any company from Hawaii is planning on coming to China to produce for exports, I would suggest they don't come. I don't think it's the market in the world for them to be producing products for export. However, if Hawaii companies want to come to China to sell products to China, they're more than welcome. The government welcomes them, and I think they have a great market to penetrate. If they want to come here to produce goods and services for China, in China, that is something that can benefit them in a great deal. One of the things I want to show here is profitability of our companies. Majority of our companies are experiencing profitability in 20% returns on investment, something that doesn't happen in most other places in the world. When we look at it, we see that 68% of American companies, members of American Chamber of Commerce in South China, actually reinvested last year. We know the budgeted amount from profits of our companies in China, in South China, was over 18 billion US dollars in reserves in order to invest as they needed. The other thing that I would like to talk about is a study that we worked together with. We worked and supported Professor Michael Enright, former Harvard Business School faculty and now a professor at University of Hong Kong, a gentleman who advises some 20 different countries. He did a 16-month study to determine the impact of foreign invested enterprises on the Chinese economy. Now, the numbers that came out of that are quite surprising when we look at it. We know that the overall GDP, 33% of China's GDP overall, and 27% of employment of China is created by foreign invested enterprises. It's a number that's quite amazing. That shows actually a much more open economy than we had anticipated. But what we really realize is the fact that our concentration of our member companies has been primarily on the east coast and southern coast of China. So when we look at some of the cities on the east and southern coast of China, for example, Shanghai, we will notice that 67% of Shanghai's trade and industrial output, 33% of employment and tax revenue, and 90% of high-tech output of Shanghai is created by foreign invested enterprises. Quite a substantial and important penetration of American and other foreign companies in this part of China. Now, when we look at southern China, for example, if you look at a city like Shenzhen, I don't think I have that slide, but that's okay. If you look at southern China and you look at Shenzhen economy, you will see that 50% of Shenzhen GDP and 50% of Shenzhen employment is created by foreign invested enterprises. And that is basically just using a few indicators, multipliers such as the investment, the FDI itself, and the amount of the salary that's spent by our employees, and a few other multipliers. One of the things I should point out is the impact of American companies on China's GDP. We know as a result of this 16-month study that every $1 million of American investment in China translates into 180 folds, $180 million in GDP. And of course, that's a substantial amount of profitability for our companies as well. What I would like to point out is the fact that, we don't need the slides anymore, but what I would like to point out is that this is a market that's wide open for products. Chinese population, they love American products if they can get their hands on it. There are many American agriculture products, other products that are not available in China. And one of the things I should point out is that yes, while the formal aspect of the cross-border trade, the sanctioned online cross-border trade that is happening, there is this other side-by-side stores, American sellers that are selling on Taobao. I realized that I can get just about any American consumer product that I want that's not available in China through various online stores, Taobao, etc., where mostly American Chinese ship products. They buy from the stores to their family and friends in China, and they're resold online. I have been able to access almost every type of consumer product I can imagine, buying it from people who are doing their small business, who are doing their own business. I think this is an opportunity for a lot of small businesses in Hawaii to sell their products, their goods and services online in China, on Taobao, on Alibaba, and other platforms that are readily available for sale. It works very well. In addition to that, I think there's a lot of opportunity here for increased exports of agricultural product, any other type of product that Hawaii can can export. Tourism is something that's right now not working very well, but that could be one of the biggest exports for Hawaii that can be sent to to China without any difficulty at all. And I would encourage that we work hard together to try to develop that industry, so that for when COVID-19 is gone and tourism returns in many ways. Russell and I had a big conversation about that yesterday, and I think I'm going to leave it up to him to take it from here. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Dr. Seyedin. Very encouraging and inspiring. And many people, as long as they stay in China for many years, and they become some kind of optimistic. And those who do not dare to come, or afraid of this and that, they probably a little bit pessimistic. But I think that many listeners, after your educational speech, they become more daring. Hopefully, thanks. And now we are moving very fast, and now we come to the last speaker, Mr. Russell Liu. Mr. Russell Liu is a native Hawaiian, and I think our listeners in Hawaii, probably many of them know Mr. Russell Liu already. And he's now the partner of Kingsfield Law Office in China and Hawaii. And he resided and worked in full-time in China for last 17 years. And you see that all the speakers we invite, especially for the first seminar, are very experienced in China. And well, when American people, they come to China to do business, the first thing is about legal issues. So for the first seminar, we also have the honor to invite Mr. Russell Liu. And because his law firm practice includes foreign direct investment, international transactions, and broad corporate practice. All these subjects are related to your move, any business endeavor in China. His experience has also included serving as special counsel with the Beijing representative office of the US law firm Shepard Mullin Richter and Hampton. And prior to this, he served as managing attorney and the chief representative of the Beijing rep office of the US law firm Taft Stettinius and Hollister. And prior to this, he has his own law firm in Hawaii for 15 years. So he's very experienced in many ways, not only in trade and business, also in intellectual property rights and legal, all aspects of legal issues when dealing with business. And today, well, he will talk about general business climate, about China in general, not only South China, not Beijing, or as Dr. Seyedin said, he regards China as different areas as different countries. And Russell has been here for 17 years. He knows a lot of the differences and the similarities. Without much introduction, now let's invite Dr. Russell Liu.
Thank you very much, Gordon, for the kind introduction. I'm really humbled to be here, and thank you very much, Dennis Ling, for all the work DBED has done to put this together. This is a great opportunity for all of you businesses in Hawaii. I'm from Hawaii, and I'm an advocate of getting Hawaii products out there, more Hawaiians just doing business out there with China. Today I'm going to talk about the general business climate. I promised Gordon that I wouldn't talk too much about the legal detailed things, otherwise I might scare people away. So I'm going to talk about what's really going on in China, and as Gordon has mentioned, and what Harley has really driven is that China is not just one country. it is several countries within a country. So let me turn to my PowerPoint and let me get that turned on here. Oops. I'm gonna, just a second. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, so again, I'm going to talk basically about the general business climate in China. I think everybody's been worried about COVID-19, the health situation. But first, to get a perspective, we got to understand that China was on this 40-year streak with an annualized GDP of 9.2%, which is tremendous growth over 40 years. And then this year in 2020, the first quarter, the economy shrank down by 6.9%. So it was a quite remarkable change. And for those in China who are under 40, you would never have seen this. You would have lived a good life for 40 years because the living standard was very high. Now, let me move. Again, as you can see here, this is over a 10-year period. The GDP went down slowly to 6%. And all of this was a controlled GDP environment because the government was slowing down a possible overheating of the economy. And what happened during this period is that China was making a move to transform from low-end manufacturing to high-end manufacturing. And again, so the GDP slowed down to 6%. And then we were hit in 2020, a big contraction in the economy. And this year, China has gone through a lot of challenges, a lot of external challenges. We're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. We're talking about the trade war. We're talking about the current situation where people are getting worried about the tech code war. And also they talk about a decoupling. So these are a little bit controversial, but for the most part, I found in China that a lot of these things doesn't affect the business that goes on for now, and except for the tech code war. And if you ask the Chinese, what is the magnitude of all of these external factors, and if we look at the earthquake Richter scale, the trade war really is about a 3.0. That has not affected the economy as people believed it would be. But the big issues of the day really is the COVID-19, the pandemic. And I'm going to talk about that, how the Chinese government handled that, because the Chinese government, really understood that getting the economy back was very, very important, And one of the things that was important is also how did they do it? How did they institute safeguards so they could get the economy running again? And if you ask the Chinese what's the most current driver that is giving concern, it's actually on a scale of 1 to 10. The tech war would be a 15. It's off scale. There's a lot of uncertainty and risk, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That was about a survey that was done this May by the Stanford University, which revealed where the Chinese businesses are concerned. Okay, and China really ramped up attacking the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the big things that helped was they had experience with SARS. They realized that quickly they'd have to mobilize. There was a national plan, strict quarantine procedures. As we know, the city of Wuhan was locked down. I left Beijing on January 29th of this year. And just when I was leaving, it wasn't made in the press, but Beijing and my community was already being locked down. We actually had barriers put up right around my apartment complex, and anybody couldn't just walk freely into your residential complex. You had to do thermometer checks, so very strict procedures. One of the things that was impressive is that in China, the use of technology, the use of artificial intelligence and digital techniques to do contract tracing. As we can see from the picture here, this is in Shenzhen. You couldn't board the subways or go in and out of there unless you had scanned in on your mobile phone this app. And what it does is that if you're sitting in a passenger car, somebody else that may have that infection, they will be able to contact you and everyone who sat around next to you. So they're very sophisticated contact tracing. And that's what is one of the reasons why China has really recovered from the COVID-19. I was working on with a Chinese law firm in the corporate project, and again, already in February, they're working with their multinational companies, rolling out what the national work plan was like, so companies could coordinate in the different provinces. They had specific dates when the businesses were required to open. So there was really a very national plan that was very coordinated. And if we look here in this slide here, we can look to see that around February, this is when the national plan was effected to get everybody back to work. And then in March 20th, okay, COVID-19 is starting to get under control. And on April 20th, the Chinese-owned assets, state-owned assets supervision and administration council of the State Council announced that the ratio of return to work had reached 99.4%. A very remarkable recovery, because at this time the economy is going full blast. It started up and people are back at work. And if we look to here, the big news this year was in May, July. During this second quarter, the economy recovered. And you see here is 3.2%. The GDP shot up 3.2%. So the economy is on its road to a full recovery. And this slide, we see the stock market, and we see that January 10th, when we had the pandemic, the Shanghai stock market activity hit a low 2,800 mark. And now on July 10th, the Shanghai stock market returned to pre-pandemic levels. So it's been a remarkable recovery. So the economy is in pretty good shape. And now it's predicted for the fourth quarter, the GDP is going to be 5.5%. So it's a really impressive recovery. And it's really something where businesses now feel confident going forward. Now, the big test, as I would say, was the October holidays. There's a National Day Week holidays, or the Golden Week. This is the big test. We had 637 million domestic travelers in China, traveling all over China on the trains to different cities. They spent $68.6 billion. All of this, there had only 186 confirmed cases of COVID-19. So at this point, it's pretty safe to say that China is pretty safe to travel, to do business. And I think this is a big factor in the business climate. There's a lot of confidence in the climate for doing business there. Now, the big issue, the big driver that affects the economy right now, there's a lot of uneasiness, is the so-called tech war. Regardless of the trade war, this is more important. Why? Because the annual global trade was worth $1 trillion. In technology, the stakes are higher. We're talking about a $9 trillion valued industry every year. So the stakes are higher. This is something that is of concern for the Chinese businesses. It is a concern for the Chinese economy. Now, how is China handling this? Well, if some of you read the news, China is coming out with the 14th five-year plan. And what happens is that every 5 years, China puts together a national plan for the next 5 years. In this plan, the China government is addressing the technology issue. It's a central core of what they call the dual circulation strategy. And what they're going to do is ramp up investment to build technology and innovation. And again, for them, the immediate concern is developing their technology and specifically the chips. Now, what's very interesting to see is that in May of this year, Stanford University, which has a center in Beijing, conducted a study of major Chinese businesses. These businesses did a total aggregate of about $1 trillion worth of business. And it turned out from the survey that they did, the most important concern that the Chinese businesses have is that they could benefit more from digitalization. So you can expect more Chinese businesses to transform to digital platforms. And if you're going to bring products into China and services, I think you're going to have to really look hard at how do I use technology to do my business. As we finish COVID-19, I think that maybe doing the businesses over the digital platforms will probably increase the opportunities for Hawaii businesses. Okay, and what is very interesting is to see and understand the perceptions of American businesses in China. Every year, AmCham China, which is separate from Harley's AmCham South China, does a business survey. The survey is fairly complicated, but I've tried to narrow down some important key points here. In 2019, if you see here in red, there was a downtick in reporting in revenues. There was declining revenues as compared to 12% in 2017. And a lot of this may be because of the effects of some of it being the trade war, the U.S.-China relationship. However, the potential profitability two-year outlook, it still showed that American businesses in China are very optimistic. Almost half of the businesses were optimistic that in terms of profitability, this year, 2020, is going to be a better year. And in 2019, 41% of the AmCham members said that that the profitability was still good. The outlook was still good. And one of the big things as lawyers working with clients is intellectual property. As we know, this is a really hot issue going into and investing into a foreign market. In the 17 years I've been in China, I've noticed a very big improvement. And the welcome news is that even the American business in China have noted that in the past 5 years, the intellectual property protection has improved considerably. So a resounding 69% noted improvement in the intellectual property laws. And note that this year, one of the things the China government has done is has enacted and made effective a new foreign investment law. And in that law, it provides for the protection of foreign business in China, protection of their intellectual property. One of the concerns that have been raised by many American companies is that when you file your company, the government officials get to see your IP, and then they end up turning it around, giving it to a Chinese company. In this actual law, it puts that there's punishment for that. So it meets out corruption. So any officials are forbidden to release that information. So a lot of specific changes, a lot of good points for the protection IP. And probably, that's probably the most important asset for most American businesses going to China. The only reason why you're selling China is because your product is better, your branding is better, and that's all comes under IP protection. In terms of the biggest factor that American businesses were concerned with was the U.S.-China relationship. And interesting, last year, 61% of the AmCham members were pessimistic. This year, it was 51%. And probably this has to do because the survey was taken during the time where the Phase 1 agreement was nearly concluding and it was going to be signed. So, but still yet, we have a significant portion, half of the businesses in China were concerned about the U.S.-China relationship. In this side, we will look and just see that, look quickly comparing your business model in 2019. If you were dealing with goods produced or sourced in China, which goes to the U.S., the export, you were up 26%. But compare on the right-hand side of the slides here, in 2019, if you import goods or services into China, we have a significant difference. The American companies were up by business by 52%. So there were 52% of the respondents saying that their businesses were up in China. And here, if you produce or source goods or services in China for China, meaning that if you made the goods in China and sold it in the domestic market, 46% of the membership said that their revenues were up. So this is good news for if you are plan to export into China, or if you plan to actually produce or source the goods in China for China market. And again, the strength of it is really you have a very large middle class in China, of 500 million people middle class. So it's a big driver for the economy. Okay, so one of the other things that's important to understand is that, again, for the business climate, the China regulations, and this is important if you plan to do business and invest in China. Again, new foreign investment law improves intellectual property enforcement. Now, a lot of the procurement business will include foreign businesses. And one key thing is that the new foreign investment law, the purpose is to give foreign investors national treatment, meaning that you will not be discriminated in many sectors that are available for you to do business. You will be on parity with the domestic businesses. The second thing that's happening in terms of government policy and law is, again, the 14th five-year plan. And we're going to see a lot of focus and emphasis on the government trying to improve domestic spending and consumption. And what this means, I think, is a lot of opportunities for Hawaii businesses, U.S. businesses, if you can get onto the digital platforms like Alibaba has in November. They have a shopping holiday called 11/11, Singles Day. And in 24 hours, Alibaba in 2019 had sales of $38.4 billion, okay? So again, that there are opportunities, government regulation is helping to push that. And so what is the business outlook in the next 5 years globally? Well, the business outlook is that China is going to probably be one of the biggest contributors and drivers of global growth. They're going to have take a share of 27.7% of their contribution to global GDP growth in 2025. So that's a big chunk. So it's a huge market, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities. So anyway, my predictions on the business climate is that with the COVID-19 being brought under control, we're going to see a lot of confidence in the Chinese markets. The business climate I think is going to grow. We're going to see a lot more in domestic consumption. So again, products and exports to China will be, I think, a very good opportunity. And again, one of the things that you need to consider to do business with China is to find ways to move onto the digital platform through Taobao or through some of these ways so that you can get your products out there. So I know we're short for time, Gordon, so I sped quickly through this. And my last word of advice is, everyone follow your dreams, follow the money, it's there.
Thank you, Russell. It's so great. And I know that all our speakers, their speech is loaded with information, and our scheduled 1 hour is too short. But I would like to listen to our listeners' comments, whether you, for the next a few sessions, you want to be longer, or, the 1 hour is just okay. We will discuss this later. And well, we said that we have a question answer session, and actually someone asked, and basically Lindsay has answered already. Probably I can read, well, the letter is too small. Read out to our listeners. Andrew Trump asked if there a growing demand for organic food products in China, especially interested about organic macadamia nuts. Lindsay has answered, there is a growing consumer interest in organic products, and there is consumer familiarity, recognition with the USDA organic certification. but it's not officially recognized by China. There are different certifications requirements to get Chinese certification. Anyways, we have resources from deep at Beijing office and the AmCham and USDA and also from our lawyers. So we can, as long as you have the will, that we can make forward and see results. And the second question is from Michelle Yamaguchi. Her question is, most products to China from Hawaii will be by sea shipments? That's a question. And presume that would be consolidated in the US mainland, for example, LA. And Lindsay answered, thanks for the question. According to Chinese import data, 93% of Hawaii imports do come via ship. Please send me an email and etc. etc. Well, I can add a few words that actually there are, when a lot of ships come to China from West Coast, they pass Hawaii and they can also load the goods in Hawaii without going to the West Coast of US. And there's no more questions from our audience. And I don't know whether, Dennis, shall we wrap up today? And before I let you go, our speakers, and I have to tell our audience that please register for our next webinar, which is on the 6th November, and it's about opportunity and challenges. And if you have further questions to our speakers, Dr. Seyedin and also Russell, you still have a chance because they will be with us next time. And we also have next time another heavyweight speaker who has been in China since 1987. So I think you look forward to the next one. And mahalo for everybody, and hope you enjoy your day.